Complex Fitness. Ba-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Big welcome to Gary onto the chat. He was kind enough to come on. And I suppose before we get started, I'm going to let Gary introduce himself, obviously, but I'm sure a lot of you would know Gary is involved in the Triage Method with Brian and Paddy. They have a serious amount of information and knowledge over on their page, over on their website, podcasts, YouTube. And for about 6 months there, I was part of the Coach's Corner. I soaked up pretty much 2 or 3 copies full of information off of it. And I found them to be great. But when I was getting Gary on, or when I asked you on, I said it was kind of difficult for me to pick what point I wanted you to talk about. But I went onto your pod, like I've listened, I'd say 85-90% of your podcasts easily. YouTube videos.
That's a lot.
And through them all. Yeah, for years. So every point that I want to talk about, you actually, to be honest, you cover. You have a podcast on every specific point. Like you do go into quite a lot. I mean, from sports performance to weight loss to managing your food to the psychology behind it. There's a lot you go into. So I thought it would be fun or different for you to just talk about yourself setting up Triage. I mean, you've gone through physio, you're in medicine now, and just kind of talk about where it all started. So if you'd like to introduce yourself and I suppose bring us back to the start of Triage Method, that'd be brilliant.
No problem. So yeah, my name is Gary McGowan. I'm Irish myself, as you can probably tell by my accent. You're Irish as well, aren't you?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Roscommon, baby.
Where are you from in Ireland, actually?
Roscommon, beside that County Longford.
Very good. That's not too bad. I mean, I respect people from the smaller, more rural counties, as long as you're not from Dublin, like my other 2 Triage colleagues. But yes, so I'm from County Kerry myself, in Ireland, in Killarney, the nicest town in the country. I stand by that. And I'm a personal trainer. So, I mean, that's my primary role is I'm a trainer. I coach people online. I also am a physiotherapist. So as a result, I have a bit of a niche there in terms of my coaching, where I coach a lot of people who have active injuries currently, or they've been might have had surgery or something, and they're trying to get back to fitness as normal. So I end up working with a lot of people like that. As you said, I'm a medical student as well, so I'm studying medicine. I'm interested in all things related to health and the science of health, and I suppose beyond health as well, performance, optimizing your existence as a human. I think all that stuff is super interesting. So they're my basic interests. Triage is the name of our company, so I run that along with Paddy Farrell. As you said, we recently brought Brian on the team as well as our head nutritionist, so hoping to expand the team further in future. And yeah, we have a business that we really enjoy running. We coach people. We have an increasing amount of education for trainers as well, and hope to move further in that direction in future, and just overall try to level up the quality of personal training in Ireland first, and then hopefully across the world. So we'll get there. Triage all started because of us effectively running our own individual businesses. So it was myself, Paddy Farrell, and Larry Doyle initially. So Larry's now running his own business, which is also thriving, and we're delighted to see that. And again, someone who I would consider to be respectable within the Irish fitness industry. But we started that because we were all effectively running our own online coaching services. We had relatively similar values and similar paths that we hoped to pursue. So we basically just merged effectively. And Paddy and I have been, running that now for 5 years or so. We started in 2016. We had both been coaching for a number of years prior to that. And yeah, our mission at Triage has remained relatively consistent. Of course, we've changed our mind on a number of topics over the years, as you absolutely should be doing. If you haven't changed your mind on anything, you're probably fooling yourself more than anyone else. But we've basically had the same kind of consistent message over the years, where we try to put health as the center of our training practice. We believe in personal trainers being frontline healthcare professionals. That doesn't necessarily mean that the industry as a whole is at that standard at this point, but we do believe that personal trainers have a key role to play in supporting the health of the population, and with increasing levels of education and professionalism and educational standards, etc. I think that personal trainers can do a lot of good to combat the ills of modernity, so to speak. So yeah, that's my intro, I guess.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's loads. So I suppose, I know you've spoken about this before, finding quite a lot of conflicting views throughout your physio course.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose, have you found any of those conflicting views going into medicine? Maybe, for example, is it quick to kind of issue medicine before issuing a change in lifestyle and things like that? Or have you found anything like that? I know you're only a year or two in, but have you come across anything like that? Because I know you've spoken about it before with physio, that not that you weren't happy with, but that there was a lot of, I suppose, things covered that weren't as practical as others from studies you had read and from work on the floor you had done before. And I know you have not a lot of gripe with physios, but you're not a huge fan of the way it's ran. Or from what I could tell anyway. Would I be right?
Yeah, I know what you're getting at. What you're getting at is, firstly, I suppose, for the listener, when people think of physiotherapy, they primarily think of a branch of physiotherapy, which would be musculoskeletal physiotherapy. So primarily physio that is aimed at people with musculoskeletal injuries, whether they be muscle injuries, joint injuries, bone injuries, etc. That's what people think of physios as doing. Physios also play a really important role in neurology, for example, following stroke, or for people with MS, Parkinson's disease, etc. My girlfriend is actually a pediatric physio, so she works with a lot of children with, for example, cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, etc. So they have developmental needs, and there's other branches of physiotherapy as well. So when I say physio, I'm thinking broadly of those things, but I know that most people think of solely the musculoskeletal element. And it's the musculoskeletal area where we really do see, I guess, a lot of quackery, so to speak. For example, like a lot of the therapies that you will see on Instagram, if you look up rehab pages, or a lot of the things that people expect from physios, whether it be, I don't know, K-tape, kinesio tape, or it might be different forms of like aggressive massage or manual therapy, or any number of things, acupuncture, all these sorts of things that promise a lot but deliver very little other than contextual effects, so to speak. But anyway, that they're the gripes, I guess, you're getting at. And the question is, have I observed those things in medicine? And to be honest, medicine actually has humbled me a lot, which has been really good, which is always to be expected, because when you go into any field of study, you have certain expectations of that field of study, and you have certain expectations of how that is going to shape you on the other side. And for me, medicine has been humbling in the sense that it's so incredibly broad and so incredibly deep that if you're to have a strong view on any particular area of medicine as a student, you're probably deluded. You probably know a lot less than you think you do because of the depth of the field. And for me, that kind of narrative, I guess, of doctors being super quick to just prescribe medicine and they don't understand lifestyle and overuse of drugs, etc. I think I might have held that a little bit stronger a number of years ago than I would now, for sure. Like, I think now I recognize the complexity of medicine, the complexity of disease, the difficulty of people actually partaking in lifestyle changes, the inaccessibility of personal training for a lot of people, and the fact that exercise and nutrition can only do so much. And for many illnesses that people suffer with, exercise and nutrition will do very little. It doesn't mean it won't improve their health, but there's it's not going to replace chemotherapy. It's not going to replace radiation therapy. It's not going to replace surgery. And I think that very often in the fitness industry, because we're in our own echo chamber, it's very easy for people to get the idea that, because exercise might have potent effects on reducing cardiovascular disease risk in the future, for example, or reducing diabetes risk, that means that it is medicine and it is superior to medicine, and people are, don't need vaccines and they don't need chemotherapy and they don't need surgery. But yeah, I would just ask you to be humble if you hold those views, because man, medicine is deep. It's deep.
That was the next point I was going to get onto, that yeah, you do see personal trainers nearly, for some reason, like you could go and do a 6-week course, get insured as a personal trainer, and all of a sudden you can cure diseases. It's nearly held, it's nearly, they're nearly looking down on some of the doctor's orders, which is absolute madness when you look at the big picture. I think an accumulation of everything is perfect. So I know you've integrated your physio and personal training business quite well together, in the sense that, I mean, if someone comes to you with a knowledge or post-surgery or pre-surgery or working around injuries, it's a very good place to be for you to advise on. So do you plan on sticking with the personal training even after medicine and integrating that, or what's the plan in the future?
Honestly, Kevin, I ask myself that question every day and I don't know.
Yeah.
So I go back and forth all the time in my head, to be honest. Because like the thing is, I guess I'm kind of in a bit of a unique position that many people would be very grateful to be in that I'm in a position with Triage where I'm able to blend a number of my different interests, a number of different skills, and also make a living from that while working pretty much exclusively online and having flexibility and autonomy in my job. Like that's a gift, man. People would kill for that. So with that, it's very hard to say that I would just sacrifice that and go 100% into medicine and ditch all that. I think over time, I probably lean more towards, trying my best to just pull the medicine side into Triage, rather than just kind of doing Triage at 10% effort or whatever. If you had asked me last year, I think I probably would have been more so in the camp of doing more minimal work for Triage and more medicine. But honestly, I'm totally open to doing whatever keeps me fulfilled and allows me to think that I am in some way contributing to making the world a better place, as cliche as that is. And I think that can be achieved in both ways. I think that bringing the medical knowledge and the physio knowledge, obviously, as well, to Triage allows us to have, I guess, a bit more of a unique position in the fitness industry, because we're able to act as that. And there are other companies that do this as well, for example, Barbell Medicine, that we would be able to bridge that gap between personal training and healthcare. And like that's ultimately what I've stated as one of the longer term goals of Triage for a couple of years now, is that I feel like bridging that gap is really important as we move forward with healthcare. So I think that I kind of envisage a world where personal trainers actually liaise with doctors, that, like, for example, just like a doctor will refer you to a physio, that they can also refer you to a trainer, because they know that the trainer has enough understanding of medical terminology that they're able to have a conversation, and that they're not, adopting this toddler attitude of being like, oh, doctors are dumb, they're just trying to kill people, they don't understand health. Like, we need to get past that if personal training is going to be respected.
Yeah, perfect. So you can clearly kind of see the evolution as a coach there. And I know you guys, how long are you guys online now?
5 years. Well, 5 years with Triage and a couple of years more before that.
Perfect. And so your coaching experience, did it start out on the floor, or did it start out straight away online, or how did it go about?
Yeah, it actually didn't. Well, I suppose, like, technically my first experience working with people in exercise capacity was through physio, really. I think technically that would be the first experience. Was in physio education, you get a lot of practical experience where you go on placements and you work with a supervisor and gradually get a little bit more responsibility as you go forward. So you get experience with people who've had strokes, MS, Parkinson's disease, but also people who are, some athletes, some dancers we worked with, all those types of different populations. So it's actually a really valuable base, I think, for my personal training experience, because it meant that, like, if you know how to prescribe exercise for someone who's had a stroke and can't use half their body, then that certainly helps you as you go forward and work with the general population, because you've had to overcome those barriers. So interestingly, I think that would have actually been my first experience, was actually working with people with stroke and stuff like that, rather than actually working on the gym floor. After that, I did, work as a personal trainer on the gym floor, but I was actually doing online coaching in some capacity, like not very seriously and not very many clients, prior to working on the gym floor. But yeah, it's been a mix, and honestly, I think that my physio experience has actually helped more as a trainer than I would have thought, really, because of having to overcome those barriers.
Yeah, of course. And the next thing, I know I'd mentioned to you before about, I suppose, the evolution of your training has changed quite a bit. So I remember a while ago listening to a podcast of yours, and you had talked about how people have a flexible approach to diet, and why can't they have a little bit more of a flexible approach to training, as in, it doesn't have to be the perfect 7-day week, microdosing, things like that. And I know that in your earlier days, it was more, I suppose, same as everyone when they start out, there's a bit of bodybuilding-esque into the type of training you do and the type of programming you do and the topics you're interested in. A big reason of that, of course, is because a lot of the studies and papers are to do with, I suppose, more so bodybuilding. I know I didn't find a lot of the studies I was digesting or inhaling through you or Larry Doyle that was sharing them, or anyone else. A lot of them were along the lines of bodybuilding, and kind of as a result of that, you train that way as well. But I noticed that your training has, I suppose, you always did a bit of different things as well. Like, I'd see you do a bodybuilding workout, and then I'd see you running 30K or 20K or whatever it was. And I'd see this kind of on and off. But as it's gone on, I suppose it's clear yours has changed as well. And I know maybe it's been amplified by COVID because of the minimum equipment and things like that.
Yeah.
But I feel before that anyway, it was kind of headed in that direction.
Yeah, I'd agree.
It was changing. So how has it changed for you, or how has your outlook on training changed and performance and things like that? And what is your view now with training, and what's your training goals, if you have any, or is it just to be a big generalist? Or
it like, personally, like, I would have started out, as you said, very much with a bodybuilding style of training. I wanted to build muscle and I wanted to get a bit stronger. That was pretty much it. Over time, that then evolved, where I started to do, as you said, a bit more running, started to focus on maybe developing a couple of different skills. I eventually started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I've been doing Jiu-Jitsu for a couple of years, and that's actually probably my primary focus with training at the moment, actually, would be Jiu-Jitsu or grappling. For people who aren't aware of that, just think of wrestling, but also with submission holds. Like, that's basically what it is. But yeah, that's kind of my primary goal at the moment, I suppose. And over time, as you said, more cardio, more variation, the types of exercises that I do, less of an emphasis on just muscle building, and just becoming a bit more of a generalist. Like, I was always someone, like, as a teenager and as a kid and stuff, where, like, I would have always been doing, informal exercise in terms of, like, climbing trees, messing around, the standard active lifestyle of a kid who lives in a relatively urban area. I had that kind of standard base, and then would have done the bodybuilding training, never really done much conditioning work during that period of time, added more of that in, eventually got interested in jiu-jitsu, and now I'm in a position where I do. See, it's difficult to say because there's not really, hasn't been an average because of COVID, but recently, over the last couple of weeks, or the last few weeks, with a kind of training in my backyard with jiu-jitsu and stuff, it's been maybe 3 to 4 jiu-jitsu sessions a week, 3 lifting sessions, I suppose, and maybe 2 supplementary conditioning sessions on top of that. So it is very much mixed, and it's not like training isn't my main thing in life. I enjoy it. I absolutely love it. I'll always do it, but it's not like I'm not trying to be the best grappler I could possibly be. Like, I want to be good and I want to get better over time, but I'm not 100% devoted to that. I'm not 100% devoted to building as much muscle as possible. I'm not 100% devoted to running. I want to be able to do a bit of everything, as you say, and for that to be the case over time, while also varying my focus over time. So for example, I would see myself, focusing for, let's say, 3 months of the year on doing a bit more running and maybe working up to a marathon, and then maybe focusing a bit more on the jiu-jitsu side of things, and then maybe focusing on trying to improve my 3 rep max squat or something like that. So that's my general approach to training at the moment, I guess.
Have you ever thought about changing the name from Skinny Gaz now that you're in the middle of beefing up again, as you were saying?
No, I think at the time when I first made that Instagram name Skinny Guys, it was kind of supposed to be ironic, a little bit ironic, as in obviously you're not that skinny, but it was just kind of for the crack, really. But also I tried to make it at the time I thought it was insightful, being I'm just remembering that I was always I was skinny when I started, and I'll always remain skinny at heart. Don't get too big for your boots or whatever. Never think you're better than the initial skinny guy. And I guess there's a bit of wisdom in that, a little bit in there. Yeah. But yeah, for me, it's just convention at this point. I meet people and they just call me Skinny Guys. So I don't want to change that. Yeah, exactly. I'm in too deep now. It just is what it is.
I suppose that'll bring me on to the next part as well, which you talked about how training isn't the be all and end all now. So it's kind of not that it takes a back seat, but you're not 100% in, obviously, because there's other priorities in life. And I know, for instance, you're on summer holidays now, so the training can step up a little bit. And I know get back to college, there's a lot of hours in that. You're coaching online, I imagine a good handful of hours in the week.
Yes.
And then you're getting in, I know even for your own head, you're getting in a bit of training when you can. So I'd like to even touch on, I suppose, a typical day, or how you manage your time on a day where you're in college. You got triage work, maybe you want to fit in a bit of a session, because I know you did speak on microdosing here and there, which for anyone who doesn't know is just basically doing the bare minimal effective dose, be it a few overhead presses, maybe in a couple of hours time, a bit on the assault bike or whatever. Just bring us through a kind of a quick day of, let's say, while you're in college, while you're managing a business, working with clients, and maybe getting a bit of training in as well. That'd be great.
Yeah. The thing is, it's actually been a lot easier with COVID because if I'm at the desk, I'm at the desk. So we were doing online learning, but then I also do online work. So I could still treat it as, right, I'm at the desk for this number of hours. It's actually a lot more difficult when I'm in college, because it means that I have to be in college for, let's say, 2 hours, and then I might go and do an hour of triage work, and then I might have another hour lecture, and then I might do an hour of triage work, and then maybe, right, we've nothing else on for the day, so I'll get in my training and then finish off my triage work in the evening. So it can be very back and forth and unstructured. Because effectively, the college timetable can be quite variable. It might be different every single day, but going forward, my college, medical education is structured in such a way that a lot of the kind of basic theory of the basic sciences and stuff that inform medicine, for example, physiology, anatomy, biochemistry, pharmacology, etc., they're front loaded within the degree. So that for the last 2 years, you're effectively just in the hospital. So you're mainly doing a practical learning, so to speak. So you're in the hospital. Let's say you could be there for between 5 to 8 or maybe 10 hours a day max, depending on the rotation. So those types of days would be a bit more structured. So let's say if I'm starting at 8 o'clock in the morning in the hospital, then what I would likely do in those cases would be, I'd probably get up a bit earlier. Sometimes I get up ridiculously early as 4:30 or 4, sometimes 5, sometimes 6. But generally when I'm busy, I'm up before 6 in some way anyway. And then I could knock out a couple of hours of triage work, because you'd be surprised, if you knuckle down for 2 hours, your phone's not in the room, you're focused, there's nothing else taking away your attention, and there's time pressure for you to get your tasks done, you'd be surprised how much you can get done in just 2 hours. A lot of people in a 6 or 7 hour workday wouldn't do 2 hours of high quality work. So that's something I'm big on, is trying to get high quality work in when you're doing it. And then I would go to the hospital, let's say, for the day, and let's say I finish around 4 o'clock. And then from there, I would probably train soon after that. So if I was doing a gym-based session, again, it depends on what the placement would be and all that sort of stuff. But the likely situation would be that I'd train after that, and then I might, finish off a bit of study or work in the evening time again then. So it's hard to say what an average day is like because things have been so messy for the last 2 years. But yeah, they're the types of things I would think about. And I suppose just to emphasize that point about quality work, because I was only talking to a guy yesterday who was like, how do you do it? How do you do medicine and run a business and train and all this sort of stuff? But the thing is, like, there's a concept known as Parkinson's law, which is that the time taken to complete a task is going to be equal to or will extend to the time that you have available to complete that task. Everyone has experienced this. If you've been to college, or even if you think back to like high school or secondary school, and you had an assignment due, you found out about that assignment 12 weeks before, 12 weeks to write 2,000 words. Easy, right? You did it the night before. You did it the night. Like, that's what people do. You do it the night before. The time taken extends to the time that is available. No one, or maybe 1% of students, will do the assignment on week 1 and have it submitted with 11 weeks to go. No one does it. No one does it. It doesn't happen. So the time taken will extend. And that's exactly what happens with a lot of personal trainers actually who work online. They might have, let's say, 5 client check-ins to do on a given day, or 3, let's say they have 3 to 4 hours of high quality work to get done. But they'll be at their laptop, messing around, watching Instagram stories, watching some vlog on YouTube or something, going into their email, coming out of their email. And they're at the desk for 10 to 12 hours a day, but they didn't get the 3 or 4 hours of high quality work done. So when you've actually got that time pressure from something else, like medicine that restricts my time to work and work that restricts my time to study, it actually makes me focus more on those things and be far more efficient. So I would not take all the credit for that. I would think that some of that is just the result of me having more constraints and having to get it done. So yeah, and that also applies to to training. I'm sure a lot of people listening have experienced this during lockdown, especially if you're working from home, and training from home as well, where you say to yourself, oh yeah, I'll do my workout in the morning. And you wake up in the morning and you're like, I'll do it after my breakfast. And then after breakfast, you're thinking, sure, it's nearly lunchtime. I'll do it after lunch. And then next thing, you're pushing the workout back to the evening time because, again, you had no constraints. So you were able to let it slip. Whereas if you had to be in the office for 9 and you were finished at 5 and you knew you had something on in the evening, there would be no option but to do it in the morning, and it would get done in the morning. That's what happens. So constraints and some rigidity can actually be helpful in getting things done. So I'm not sure if you found that yourself, Kevin.
Big time. I know even over the lockdown. So I work partly online, and then I manage a private gym in Roscommon. So when that closed, like, my schedule way open, because I'd either be on from 6 a.m. to 2 or 2 to 10. Have to pack in my work before and after on those days. So as soon as COVID hit, or even in January there, like, I had all these hours. Sure, I ended up packing, let's say, just to have some form of schedule. I'd even write down what time I'd walk the dog at, just to make sure that I had something on the hour, because if I didn't, I would, as you said, I would be sitting at the desk. And I know there was a lot of wasted hours at the desk. So like, the high quality work for me during lockdown was honestly between 6 and 8 a.m. would be like the high quality hours. And then once my partner wakes up and we eat and go walk the dogs or whatever, things would slow down from there on, because I had such an open schedule. So even some days I'd put a session on in the morning and a bit of conditioning in the evening, just so I'd have to work around those. But yeah, I find since being back, like, everything's a bit more switched on now that I'm back managing in the gym and coaching in the gym 30 to 40 hours a week, working online maybe 10 to 20, closer to 20 to be honest. And then with football on now as well, I really need to have my schedule right, because I know if I sleep in or if I put things off, it's going to fill up my weekend, which I don't want. So it is that schedule is important, especially for me. And it was the same in college. We used to have to travel home. When I think about it, I traveled home on a Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday for under 21 football. And this was sorry, the dog just walked in. This was all during final year. And on top of that, then you're working Friday night in the bar, Saturday night in the bar, Sunday in the bar, and we're playing around them. So you had to have your schedule right. Like there were days they dragged us up to UCD from, I went to NUIG, and if there was exams on in Dublin, you'd have to get on a bus in Galway and go to UCD to train to help out the lads who were based in Dublin and things like that. You wouldn't be back till after midnight and you'd be back in the next day. But I actually found, because of it, my studying and everything improved so much more, because I didn't really waste any time. There was no waste of time at all. So I definitely would believe in that. Now, so the way you'd go about it, would you, let's say on a Sunday or whatever day, would you look at the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and would you fill out time slots, or would you be the night before every day? Would you kind of sit and plan out the next day or fix it up? Or how do you go about scheduling your time? I know for you it's a lot of the days, but
The ideal is to do it, I think, if I can do it on the Sunday evening and know exactly what my week is going to look like, especially if I'm busier, that's what I try to do. But on a daily basis, then what I'll always do is at night before I go to bed, I'll have a look at my calendar. I'll kind of review the work I've done that day, and then have an idea of what I'm doing the next morning when I wake up. So I have a rough idea of how my day is going to be outlined, regardless of the constraints that are in place. So at the moment, because it's summertime, I'm working exclusively from home, self-led, do what I want, when I want, other than the calls that I have scheduled. So what I'll try to do is just make sure that I have some outline for the next day, when I'm going to bed that evening, because what that means then is that there's kind of less anxiety going to bed. Like one of the things that can be crippling is if you have no schedule and you've loads of things to do, that's all you think about when you're going to bed, because you don't know when you're going to do them. You have no plan. They're just in your head floating around. Whereas if the night before you're actually saying to yourself, right, I'm going to do this then, that's exactly what it requires. I know they're getting done tomorrow. You can park it, okay? Because that's there now on the page. I know what I'm doing. I'll do that in the morning. For now, I'm sleeping, you know? So yeah, ideally what I try to do is have my week mapped out at the beginning of the week, and then on a daily basis review and make sure it's clear in my head the night before when I'm going to bed. So last night I woke up, or I was going to sleep, and I was like, right, I have a call with a new client, Jamie, at 9. Then I have a call with Kevin at 10. I had the podcast 3 to 5 with Paddy, and I had another call scheduled in for 11:30, which is cancelled now, so I can take my time. But so then I was looking at that day and I was thinking, right, it's Friday, so I want to spend some time with my girlfriend this evening, have a bit of freedom. She loves the weekends. I'm, not too fussed about them, but she loves the weekends. So it's kind of a buzz for her to come home on Friday and us to be doing something. So I'm like, right, how can I facilitate that? Because that's a priority for me, while also getting my training done. So I saw that gap there today between 11:30, say, and 3:00, where I'll do maybe an hour or two of client work within that period, and then the hour or so that I'll also train in there to make sure that it's done. So because I knew exactly what my day was like, there was some pillars there to structure it. It made me, prioritize when I would get my training done.
Yeah, and there is a big sort of anxiety around that, because I know myself, when I haven't it written out, or I don't know what's down the next day. I know what's on, but it's not written there. There is that nearly when you're lying in bed, it's like paralysis by analysis. You're just thinking, God, I have so much on. But if you actually write it out, I find it doesn't seem that big when it's written out, even if there is a lot to do once it's written out. And there's a bit of a satisfaction crossing through the line as well. I just love to.
Oh, it's brilliant.
Oh yeah, it is. Yeah, it's very satisfying. But yeah, that's brilliant. I actually, before you go, or before we finish up, I'd love for you to talk about the coach's corner and things like that, just for anyone listening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the coach's corner is effectively, it's an educational platform that we have on site at the moment that trainers can access. There will hopefully be some bonus features to being a member in future in terms of certification and that, but we'll leave that aside for the moment. As it stands, it's an educational platform. We're adding content to it regularly, especially at the moment. Adding in a lot of content, especially anatomy stuff at the moment. I'm doing a lot of work on, but it's for personal trainers who are, I guess you could say, they're already qualified. I guess at the moment you could come into it without any qualification, but you'd probably be better at this point in time to try and get a qualification first, I guess. But it's providing education on things like anatomy with application to exercise, of course, and to personal training, on nutrition, the basics of nutrition theory, some practical stuff in there, exercise physiology. There's a lot of different things that we've got in there, videos going through different exercises and breaking down the mechanics and some of the cues you might use for clients, how you might customize them for clients. So it's basically a live platform that is developing over time, content being added. So it's not like you just subscribe and there's a fixed amount of content. It's being added consistently. So yeah, it's accessible to trainers. You can sign up if you'd like. And yeah, it's a monthly recurring subscription effectively. So if you try it for a month and you don't like it, that's fine. But yeah, that's the Coach's Corner. Have you benefited from the content in there? And if so, what did you like?
I was pretty much in it from when you started it up. It's only up about a year, isn't it? Just over a year.
Yeah.
I got in on it then and I thought it was great, but I pretty much had caught up with everything at the time. You were all back in college, so I caught up with pretty much all that was on it, and I don't know what was happening anyway. I said I'd come off it, and I emailed. I think I was talking to Paddy, and he said he was saying the view he had for it would be down the line that it's something you could pop in and out of. So now that there's a lot more content up, and I have that bit more time coming up now, I probably wait till football's over, just not stress myself over it again. But I'll probably pop back on and pick up where I left off. That's the plan anyway. But I found it very beneficial. I found it like in the course you do. And I suppose when you're trying to look up this information yourself, you don't know if you're actually getting the gold standard information. Like a lot of the time it's someone's opinion on that, and they might throw up studies with it, and you go in and you read these studies and you're thinking, God, they left out a lot of this here. Do you know, maybe this, there's a lot of confirmation bias in studies that go up, or people post with their viewpoints. And I've done it myself. You know, you post something that you believe to be true or believe to be right, and you back it up with a study that you know supports that. I suppose with ye, there was usually more than one study thrown up with it. There was a lot. And I found it good to just I used to just go through the slides, write it all out, get as much pen to paper as I could. And then it wasn't actually till after I was finished where I opened it to kind of read through it again that I found I could actually take in the information. But yeah, I really found it useful, and I found it leaps above, I suppose, any other course I've done, including the certified course. I found it very, very good. Things were really explained well, and I suppose everything was broken down for me. It was all there. It's all the studies under it. You have a bit of a paragraph under each video, and I learn better from those videos anyway than I do from, I suppose, just written articles.
I'm glad to hear that, because that's one of the reasons we started to do those, is because we found that people just like watching stuff. They don't like reading big bodies of text. So that's why we started the video. So no, I'm glad to hear that. But yeah, I mean, one of the things is that there's such a big it's very difficult for trainers to know what they need to know. Like, for example, like this is my anatomy textbook that I have here. It's Gray's Anatomy. It's kind of like the classic anatomy textbook, but I can barely carry it. It's like 4 kilos. Like there's no way anyone's ever going to read through that, especially as a trainer, because it's made for doctors. It's made for surgeons. You know, it's for people who really need in-depth knowledge of anatomy. And like, personal trainers don't need that. Like, you don't need to know absolutely everything about all the branches of the blood supply to each muscle. Like you do if you're a surgeon, you don't if you're a trainer. And very often the sections in here in these anatomy textbooks that are about muscle function, for example, will be super brief, because like if you're a surgeon, like, yeah, you need to know muscle function, but you don't need to know what muscles are contributing when you're doing a bench press versus a lat pull down versus a shoulder press. So what we try to do is, or what I try to do when I'm teaching the anatomy at least, is take the knowledge that I have from my anatomy reading, from medicine and from physio, and ask myself, what does a trainer need to know? You know, how do we actually apply this to exercise? That's what matters. So yeah, I think, again, just trying to bridge that gap there really is the goal, because I do find that, and I know I'm focusing on anatomy, it's just one portion of the content, but I do find that anatomy in general is an area that personal trainers have on average, a poor understanding of. And I think that understanding anatomy is one of the basics of personal training, because you're applying exercise to that anatomy with the intent of getting specific adaptations. And I think knowing a little bit more than you need to know is a good idea, but you don't necessarily need to pick up Gray's Anatomy and read all the way through, you know.
Yeah, that is what I loved about it, was the practical application, because I'd done
Yeah.
2 other courses, I suppose, online, and I did specifically an anatomy one before, and honestly, I came out of it thinking, I just thought, Jesus, this is awful. I do not like, none of it seemed practical, first of all, and then other parts were just, I don't know how to even go about it. It was extremely wordy. It was like, this cannot be for personal trainer. Do you know, like, it's,
Yeah.
How is this going to be applicable? This is mad. It just seemed like they took it from, I don't know, even a physio's course or something else, and just changed the name, and we're like, right, this is the same information they need. Whereas with yours, the practical application was great. You had examples, you had some stories about how you had worked with someone maybe suffering from, I know you'd done rheumatoid arthritis was one of them.
Yes.
And just things like that were very practical, that I actually come across online and on the coaching floor. Like when I'm coaching in the gym in town, these are the kind of things I'm coming across. People who have those little, maybe in their hands, they're starting to get that rheumatoid arthritis, or just different little things like that I found so useful, that wasn't really in any other course. And if it was maybe just a definition, and that might have been a definition and some mad functions. That was probably it. But yeah, I found it great. I found it very good, and I'm definitely looking forward now that you're uploading a lot more. And I know there's been a lot, because I still see posting up stuff that I haven't. You're posting up articles and things on it that I haven't got in my copy. So I know there's a lot there to go back to, which is great. Yeah.
Well, fair play to you for being so proactive with your own education. Did you come out and did you study personal training right after school, or did you do something before this? Or
commerce and economics. So
okay.
Economics, and I was a fund accountant for over a year. And then I was about a year in there. This was back in 2016, 17, I think. So yeah, about that. And then I lasted over the year, I think, and couldn't really hack it. And when I finished on the Monday, I started the course. I think I did a quick 6-week or 8-week course back then, and it was I think it was with Elite Fitness or something. And I finished on the Friday, started on the Monday, and I worked in a cafe for about 3 months or 2 months, because I didn't want to let I was sharing a room with one of the lads from school, and I said I'd hold it to Christmas and stay up in Dublin. And straight away, because I was going abroad to Vietnam then in January after, so I was moving abroad, so I wanted to work, but I didn't obviously want to get a job in a gym and then have to leave it. So I started online pretty much straight away. I think my first few programs were €50 for 12 weeks just to get some experience.
I think I was the same, when I first started.
Anyone who'd want to jump on. I did a few free ones. I just wanted to get going. And then luckily enough, out to Vietnam, and the plan was to teach English, but there was an English fella there. I actually had him on a few weeks back, and he ran a gym out there and he hired me. So it all started off then.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it all worked out anyway.
Glad to hear it. How's the personal training / fitness industry? And I was going to say in Roscommon, but I know Roscommon people say Roscommon, so Roscommon
with the G. But yeah, it was great. That is why I needed to further the education. Like for the first year or two, luckily in Vietnam, I had so much time to read these case studies and to work on it, but I suppose I couldn't afford, first of all, to even fund myself another course. So I had to wait a while. And as soon as I could, I jumped into a few different courses, because I knew that's where I was far behind on I suppose the anatomy side of things would have been where I really lagged a bit. Would have been very practical, easy with the simple stuff, could run a class, could run small coaching groups. But I knew when it came to the one-on-one or the small groups or people with certain needs, that's where I'd fall behind. And I suppose that's where you came in then.
Brilliant. Well, hopefully we can help again in future. I hope so.
Yeah, so I think we've ran through everything. I don't want to hold you too long. I know you have a busy day, and now with your extra free hour, you'll probably get started on that client work early. So I will let you go. And before you go, obviously, I know, do you have coaching spots left, or?
Yeah, we have a couple now. We have been super busy because of reopening of gyms and everything. So we're not like, as you'll have seen, we're not like massively pushing social media, asking for clients or saying we have free spots or whatever. But there are a couple of spots available if people are interested and they're the right fit. We don't just take on anyone from a coaching perspective. We generally work with people who maybe they've been with other trainers before, or they've been trying some things themselves for a while and they're just not getting results, or they have an injury, or they have a poor relationship with food, etc. Okay, so if you think you need that extra bit of help through high quality coaching, then we're your guys, and you can reach out, info@triagemethod.com, or go straight to our website, triagemethod.com, or just follow Triage Method on Instagram and reach out to us there, or myself at Skinny Gaz.
That's perfect. All right. Well, we'll leave it at that. Thanks a million for coming on. It means
My
a lot
pleasure.
to take up some of your time, and I hope we'll meet again soon. And I'll be back on that coach's corner once we win championship.
Well, I hope you win it.
Good. Okay. Take it easy.
Thank you very much.
Complex fitness. Ba-da-da-da-da-da.